Hey there, emerging expat. You're tuned in to Let's Move to Portugal. I'm Victoria from Expats Everywhere's podcast, and I have the distinct honor of bringing you, YouTube travelers, and our resident of Portugal experts, Expats Everywhere's Josh and Kaylee. Each week they'll inspire, they'll educate, and they'll accompany you on your journey to Portuguese residency. This week on Let's Move to Portugal, Anna from Savvy Cat Realty discusses the complexities of the real estate market in Portugal, including how expats are actually the victims in the rising prices of housing. To keep this podcast going strong, we've included a few brief ads. Thanks for supporting us by listening.
We're very happy that Savvy Cat Realty wanted to support us and sponsor the podcast, as we're actually clients of theirs.
When we started our journey to purchase our property in Portugal back in 2022, they came right alongside us in the process.
Savvy Cat Realty provides a highly tailored service to supporting those relocating to Portugal. Their mission is to find you the best match in continental Portugal. Their local experts will guide you through the whole process, keeping sustainability for both sides.
They have a full local team, including agents, lawyers, and engineers, making sure you are safe. And as locals, they believe fair prices are good for both sides.
And Savvy Cat Realty works with both rentals and purchases with budgets from $50K to millions, always making sure it's worth the cost.
Book a free call at savvycatrealty.com and have them on your side planning your move to Portugal.
Hey, expats and travelers, welcome back to Expats Everywhere Presents Let's Move to Portugal podcast. Kaylee, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Today's much better. We have been getting a lot of rain, this big storm that has just, like you said, battered all of Portugal. I know that a lot of people say, it rains a lot in Porto, but it was raining everywhere. Actually, and some flooding that was happening in Algarve and Lisbon. I didn't see too much flooding here. You saw
it down in Ribeira, or by Ribeira, so down by the riverside.
The lowest part, I guess, because everything, because then all the water's running that direction. But generally, when we were getting a lot of rain, you would see the gutters filled with water, but it was moving. Not so much flooding, at least. It might have happened some places in Porto, but we didn't see it with our own eyes. But we definitely saw friends sending stuff of different places around Portugal further south. So crazy rain, that storm that came off the coast, but sunshine now. So we're good.
Absolutely. And it's supposed to be all week, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. So that is great. If you're new here, welcome. You clicked on the title thumbnail combo, unless you're listening to the audio. But you clicked on this, I think, because you want to figure out why expats are victims in all of this.
Dun, dun.
Yeah. So I sit down with Anna, and we'll talk about this a little more in a minute, but I sit down with Anna and we talk real estate and kind of what's been going on in the cost of living rise that's happening in Portugal. And she's Portuguese and works in the industry. And she has some definite thoughts on it. So it was really good to hear her perspective. We'll talk about that in a minute. In this podcast, we start out with our producer, Victoria, who gives you a rundown on what the episode is like. And then we talk to you for about 10 minutes in the portion that we call the weekly welcome. And that's what we're doing right now. So welcome.
Welcome. Wait, I didn't get to ask you. How are you?
I'm good.
I always feel bad if I don't.
You know what I'm not good about is I'm a bit sad about the YouTube channel right now. The main channel is just up and down, and mainly down rather than up with the views. We just put out a video, a really nice interview that you did with Leslie, who is a retiree that got a bit bored and decided to start doing some side work. She leveraged her teaching background to do some, some substitute teaching at an international school. And she's got a little, experience there. She briefly talks about that in the interview, but then she got into real estate and she has become a realtor, and she talks about that and has, an interesting perspective. The main portion of the interview itself, though, was really about her retiring and not thinking that it was possible to retire early and then doing it, and the complications that arise with that. So if you haven't seen that video, watch it, give it a watch.
I think what's also interesting is she's been here a few years, so she has seen the changes going on around Portugal. So that's also interesting, something we kind of talk about as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Portugal just qualified for the World Cup. Kaylee and I are huge soccer fans. Soccer. And they just qualified for the World Cup. Ronaldo was not there because he got a red card in the previous match with Ireland. And if you're fans of English-speaking countries, Ireland has qualified. Well, not has qualified, but they snuck into second place after some drama. So they beat Portugal in their game to keep their chances alive. And then they go into the game against Hungary. And late drama in that game, turn a 2-1 result around, make it 3-2, and boom, they're in the qualification playoff in Europe. Let's go.
Our Irish friends are excited.
They're so excited.
Even if they're not big fans, they're still very excited.
We've got several Irish friends that are living here in Portugal that we've made since being here, and they're super excited. And oddly enough, not many of our Portuguese friends are that excited. There's a lot of national Seleção hate.
Oh, yeah, there is that. But also, I think they've got a really good team, and so they should maybe be better than how they're performing. So I think that's causing some uncomfortable feelings for our Portuguese friends.
They did just win their last game 9-1.
Right? Yeah.
And it was fun to watch.
Yeah. No, they don't need to complain. They just need to sort it out and get ready, because I think they could do well in the World Cup.
Yeah. Our daughter Valencia was like waving her Portuguese flag like mad, which was awesome.
It's cute.
Okay. So that is, on kind of what's been happening in our world. Anything to update on otherwise before we chat a little bit about this?
No,
episode?
I mean, if you're here in a couple weeks, we're going to have a co-event, I guess you could say, a little bit Christmas. It's music with some of our friends who are musicians, Musicians Live 360.
They're magicians?
I know. Oh, man. I couldn't get that out. Musicians Live 360, Michael and Cheryl Bliss. So we'll be putting something out on Instagram. So follow us on there. Information if you want to do an open type meetup. We don't really do open meetups anymore, but this is an event, so we're going to kind of co-host that. So that should be a lot of fun. That's coming up, and it'll be a little Christmassy, a little music.
Yeah, I think honestly we should just be announcing that every single week until it happens.
In a couple weeks anyway.
Speaking of magicians, I forgot to mention last week on Monday, so after we recorded, we did go to Siegfried and Joy, who are we'll drop their Instagram in the description of this video. They're internet famous, would you say? They became famous on, I guess it was Instagram
or TikTok. I don't know which one it was.
Probably both.
Yeah,
but basically, they're these really quirky, funny Las Vegas comedians that do magic. It's almost like bad magic, but it's magic.
But they joke the whole way through.
But it's bad.
They can actually do magic, but then there's
they'll make mistakes,
and there's comedy. I don't know how to say that. Comedian, comic stuff going on as well, where they're funny. But they're actually from Germany, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, they're really funny. We took Sia. There were a lot of kids. They involved the kids, which was fun. It went way longer. It was only supposed to be an hour.
I was going to say cultural alert. So on when we were booking the tickets, it said that it was a 1 hour show and there was no intermissions, which that would make sense. It's 1 hour. However, and it started at 9. So we were thinking, okay, 9 to 10, fine.
Not
we can
bad,
get Sia to bed, 10:30, not horrible, later than normal, but not horrible. Oh man, we're approaching 11 o'clock. Sia's
still
like,
at the theater. She had to go to the
I gotta go pee. And, and then
okay.
Kaylee just left and I finished by watching the show.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was funny.
Awesome. Okay. So Anna from Savvy Cat Realty, one of the show sponsors, thank you, Savvy Cat, talks to me today about, really about the complexities of the real estate market in Portugal. And whether you're buying or renting, I know it's really important to have an understanding of what you're about to step into.
Yeah, definitely.
And even if you've been here for a bit, have an understanding about what's actually going on.
Because maybe you haven't been tracking it and it's changing. So you kind of want to know what's going on. If you've been here for a couple of years, you've not been tracking it, you're ready to possibly buy. Yeah. You want to know what's going on right now.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about kind of the ethical practices of real estate in Portugal. We talk about, how dynamic the market is, the challenges that foreigners face when trying to either rent or buy. And then we also kind of from south to north, we talk about the different regions, and Anna gives her insights because her company works the whole country, certainly continental. And we talk about, what each market is like, because the markets are different, obviously. I mean, I think those principles apply to the US or whatever your home country is. There's going to be pricing differences depending on not only what city, but even the neighborhoods.
Yeah. State, city. I was just going to say state, city, and then neighborhood. So all that varies.
Yeah. So, we talk about that. We also talk about like rental scams and working with buyer's agents. And I mean, Kaylee's beat that drum for a couple of years now about how it's important to consider at least working with a buyer's agent as opposed to just going to an agent and being like, hey, can you tell me about your listing?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest issue is that generally when you go to a realtor, they work for the seller or the landlord, depending if you're buying or renting. So who's in your corner at that point? Who's really looking out for you? And this is where a buyer's or a renter's agent is really valuable. And
I think it's partially how or why the market has done what it's done is that there weren't enough people that understood the market from a buyer's perspective that were going to agents with a knowledge of what's actually happening.
Right.
So therefore they were getting taken advantage of.
Yeah. They didn't have someone vouching for them.
So, I think it's probably time to just let Anna do her thing and tell us all about it.
Let's go for it.
Let's do it. We know that relocating can be stressful. Trust us, Portugal is the 5th country we've relocated to.
So it's nice to have someone helping you out, which is why we can confidently recommend Global International Relocation, which is a leading provider of relocation, moving, and mobility services.
They can support individuals, families, and even businesses when it comes to moving internationally.
I like how they're able to simplify the relocation process, and they help with everything you can think of, and actually even those things that you don't think of.
Of course, you have the immigration side of things, but there are aspects like pet relocation, shipping your car, moving household goods, and settling in that are all things they assist with. They're really comprehensive when it comes to mobility.
With over 17 years of experience and having expertise in over 180 countries, they aren't just for your move to Portugal.
So for personalized assistance, visit global.pt or get in touch with us for an introduction and to receive a personalized relocation quote. One of the most important pre-move things to consider involves your finances. Here's the cool thing. If you've moved already, it's not too late.
Yeah, that's right, because we met John a little late in our journey, but he certainly helped us make sure that we're on the right track.
John McNerney from Green Ocean Advisors is an American living in Lisbon with an office in San Francisco, which helps him have a pulse on both sides of the pond. John helps people understand where they're at before they take the plunge and move abroad.
As a financial advisor, John can help you understand your financial position no matter what stage of life you're in, whether you're curious about what your realistic retirement date is or how to invest your money post-retirement.
His love for finance and the differences between US and Europe have given him the ability to guide his clients in the right direction when it comes to investing and allocating funds. For example, you might want to sell your house before you become a tax resident here in Portugal, so you're not paying additional taxes here.
Josh and I have even talked to him on several occasions about some major life events that have happened to us and how to navigate them smartly from a financial perspective. If you'd like to be put in touch with John from Green Ocean Global, click on his Calendly link below to schedule a free consultation that he provides our viewers to see if he's the right fit for you.
Just make sure that you choose the Expats Everywhere intro call for your free consultation. Anna, I'm really looking forward to this chat because it's been a while actually since I've dug really deep into what's happening with Portugal's real estate. So first and foremost, your company, Savvy Cat Realty, is one that approaches real estate with a really ethical kind of mindset towards wanting to keep housing sales prices and then also rental rates within the norm. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then we'll kind of see how things have shifted over time.
Yeah, that was always my initial goal. Of course, there's only so much I can do as a small company, but the story of how I created this company very much comes from my own struggles with the real estate market and how I didn't really agree with the way it operated. So I kind of got to a point when I was like, you know what? I'll just do something different that is aligned with my own values. So that is a bit of how it started. And also because I saw the struggles of a lot of expats. I lived in the Algarve for a few years. And as you know, in the Algarve is an extremely popular touristic destination. And I actually purchased my first property in the Algarve. And at the time, so we are talking about 2016, there was basically two different markets. There was the market price for locals and there was the market price for expats. And it's not like expats want to pay more, right? They just don't have the information and the right people on their side. And in the end, now you don't really see that much of a distinction. The prices overall went up for everyone. But in the Algarve, you don't no longer have this very distinct kind of local market and expat market. But I do believe that the way that things are under-regulated and there is a huge lack of transparency in the market leads to the prices rising unnecessarily. Like if the market was a lot more transparent and a lot more controlled, then probably the prices wouldn't have inflated as fast as they were. And yes, of course, it's easy to blame the expats, but I do see that from my perspective, the expats are also a victim in this. I mean, it's not like you want to pay more. It's just that they don't have the information and they often compare it to their own local markets that are completely different. And for them, it seemed like a good price. And the people that they were being accompanied by would incentivize them to go forward because they would also be making money with it. And in the end, they would end up paying more than they should have and inflating the market. And I do believe that became a huge problem. And now you are getting to this point where, as you know, there is a significant habitation crisis in Portugal. And, well, this is not exactly something that there is an easy solution to. But in my personal opinion, I do think that if things were approached differently from the start, let's say like if 10 years ago, there was a different kind of approach and a different kind of control and a different kind of transparency on the real estate market, I do believe that the prices wouldn't have inflated as fast as they did.
Okay.
So that's
a ton to unpack there. And I think really the awesome thing is we've got 45 minutes to unpack that. So we're definitely going to unpack it, but I want to back up and just point out or kind of get a little bit more of the history for the listener. You're not new to real estate. Your family, you were kind of brought up in real estate. Your family has been real estate investors and multiple property owners. So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny story because the real estate investors in my family, they kind of skipped the generation. It was in my grandparents' generation. And there was some big ones. My great-grandfather, he owns multiple, probably on the hundreds of properties. And my uncle, which is curiously a priest, my great uncle, who was a priest, was actually a very, very successful businessman. And he's actually the one who built the Igreja do Marquês, the Marquês in the Porto. He built that basilica. And yes, a big part of his real estate went to the church, but he was definitely involved. So ever since I was very young, my father kind of made a point of getting me involved in it. So in renovations, in sales, in rentals, and in everything. And so I kind of grew around that a lot. And that's one of the reasons when at some point, it was actually when I was living in the Algarve, I figured, okay, maybe I'll give it a try on the real estate market. And I was so shocked with the lack of basic knowledge of the people working there. Like most people, they had absolutely no idea what was legal and what was not. They just would do the basic of, having the documents, seeing if the documents inside, did they even check if the documents actually matched, if the areas matched and if the property ownership matched. And in the end, it kind of ends up being a sales game. It's very much about who can sell faster, also because of the lack of exclusivity. And I just hated that environment. So I actually decided not to go into real estate at all and just stayed away from it from a few years until COVID hit, because back when I was living in the Algarve until COVID, I actually had a Viking tavern. So I owned an itinerary Viking tavern that sold mead and Viking crafts in festivals and medieval fairs. Mm-hmm. And as you can imagine, COVID was not the best for that. Right. And I did a huge pivot because at that time I also sold that property in the Algarve. Just before COVID hit, like it was like a few months. I sold it in the end of 2019, and just like 3 or 4 months later, COVID started. So it ended up being really good timing. And my father also passed away during COVID due to secondary issues. He was already staying in the hospital and ended up being affected by the lack of doctors. And at the time, I very much got that, time runs out feeling. And I wanted to do something with the legacy my father left me, because he was very much the one who kind of dropped me into the entrepreneurship and real estate world.
Awesome.
And this time is also when I came across this British lady who was talking about her journey buying property in Portugal and how complicated it was for her, because of not only how the market was very chaotic, but also because she was looking from a lifestyle perspective. She didn't particularly care about location. She cared about what she would have in that house and how her life would be. And that wasn't... people didn't really work like that. People generally work on specific locations. Yep. And it kind of, a light bulb went out. And I think, I can probably help these people. And I started developing a whole business idea around this and launched the first version of Savvy Cat Realty in February 2021.
Okay. Yeah, because something like that is definitely more bespoke, and I think way more bespoke than a regular real estate agency wants to be, which is more like location oriented and certainly like listing oriented, because it's like they're only going to show the listings that they have. Okay, super interesting. Let's dive into a bit of some numbers, if you don't mind, and then we'll talk about some do's and don'ts, because I think you have a ton of experience on and advice to give on what foreigners can look out for as they try to navigate the market here. So you've lived in over 10 different cities in Portugal. So you have an amazing array of experience to draw from. What are some of the markets that you feel like are, let's say, oversaturated or inflated maybe? And then which ones are there areas of opportunity when it comes to real estate, both on the buying and the rental level?
I think the irony of the inflation is that the markets, as you know, are free markets and are all about supply and demand. And therefore, although I do think that especially Lisbon and the Algarve are extremely inflated, I do not believe, like, there's a lot of people saying, oh, the bubble will burst and so on. I've been hearing that since I started Savvy Cat.
Yep.
It hasn't burst. I don't think it will burst anytime soon. Do I think the prices are fairly unsustainable and inflated for the local economy? Yes. Yep. Do I think they will go down? No. So that's the thing we have here right now. But yeah, overall, I think the most inflated markets are the Algarve and Lisbon. But I do not think that even if you went for one of those markets, I don't think you would be losing money on the long term, because it's unlikely they will be getting down.
Okay. So, and when you say Algarve, you're talking about the whole region. Like, are there any spots in Algarve that are still like close proximity to the ocean that
there are definitely spots that are a bit better, but overall, when you are close to the coast, the prices get really inflated. I would say that the worst places are definitely the Golden Triangle, so Vila Moura, Quinta do Lago, and Val do Lobo. Then Lagos, Albufeira are probably the most expensive locations in the Algarve. Then you have like most of them would be more affordable, but still quite inflated from a local perspective. And the areas that are a bit more on the affordable side are actually the two corners. So the corner near to Spain, so the Monte Gordo area. And it actually has spiked very drastically over the past 5 years in prices. And the other corner on the Sagres side, and which is always has been a bit more expensive because it's very close to Lagos, but it's still relatively affordable considering it's in the Algarve. And then, of course, the more interior regions like Silves and Monchique are also a bit more affordable, but still not exactly affordable.
Okay. What's kind of the standard price per square meter on the purchasing side of things?
Yeah, it gets pretty crazy. Like in the Vila Moura area, it goes to like 4,000, 5,000 per square meter. In the places like Quinta do Lago and Val do Lobo, which are probably the most expensive places in Portugal, it can go all the way to 13,000 per square meter.
Whoa.
Yes. And then I would say the more realistic average on the rest of the places, it's between 3 and 4K. Mm-hmm. And then you still have some places on like the 2 to 3K range.
And is it possible to rent in these places? Because a lot of these places are like landed homes, right?
Yes, that's it depends apartments. Really. If you have the more like cities, so Lagos, Vila Moura, Albufeira, Portimão, they have a lot of apartments too. But then you have some very villa locations for sure.
Right.
And there is actually a lot of demand for villas in the Algarve because I worked in the whole market, and the Algarve market in general, it's often one of the most difficult ones to work with because it's very overcrowded. So there's a lot of agencies and a lot of people there, and people don't like to share. Let's say that in the Algarve, it's the place where we have the most agencies refuse to share commission. We have that happen rarely in other places. In the Algarve, it's extremely common. So when it comes to rentals, it's a big problem because holiday rentals are very profitable. So there is a lot of people, and most of the landlords will try to do holiday rentals between, let's say May and September. And then they will sometimes rent at lower prices between September up to March. And then for those who actually want to rent long term for the whole year, it is a very difficult market. And the properties that are available are often quite expensive. So it happens both in the apartments and the villas. I would say that the villas are harder on the rental market because there is less offer, but then the apartments are very concentrated, of course, in the medium big cities.
The cities, yeah. Okay, interesting. So you also touched on Lisbon area there in terms of being an possibly inflated market, and the prices that you were naming, like price per square meter in Algarve in some of those key areas are also similar prices that you find in Lisbon, right? And
they
you
can
see
be
up
yes.
to 10,000 a square meter in Cascais or
you
Estoril
do.
Or, yeah.
You do see up to 10,000 a square meter in the Cascais area, and also in the Avenidas Novas area, which is one of the most expensive areas in Lisbon. But overall, the average price in the center of Lisbon, it's about 5,500. So that's the actual center of the town. If you look on the whole urban area, it comes down to about 4,500. And then you do the thing about Lisbon. It's like every big city, I do think that if you are looking at Lisbon, and especially if you are on a budget, you should definitely work with a buyer agent, because there are good and bad neighborhoods in Lisbon. And the normal agencies, the whole thing of you are not paying for a buyer agent and not paying for a service, because they are working for the seller, and their job is to sell for as much as possible and as fast as possible. That's their job. It's not to protect the interests of the buyer. Right. So they will, especially if you are on a budget, it's important that you make sure you have all the information, because there are definitely places that are not as good when it comes to safety and overall location in Lisbon. And of course, it's important. I do think it's important that you are aware of what you are getting. And it's also a lot of things, and I've seen this, my Lisbon agent always has the craziest stories. It's always funny. Like, we always get the craziest stories from Lisbon. And we've seen like people who bought apartments digitally, and then they were completely different from what they thought they were buying, or had a bunch of problems or noise or mold or whatever. We had landlords that were traumatized because there's people making scams and showing apartments and saying they are the owners and trying to get the money. There is bidding wars on rentals. The only place where I see bidding wars on rentals is in Lisbon. Like, people will come in and say, I will pay the whole year. And we're sometimes talking about 3,000 euros a month rentals. It's crazy.
That's wild. So you mentioned safety concerns. What exactly are some of the safety concerns that you as a Portuguese person find in Lisbon?
I think there are some neighborhoods that are lower income, or a lot of low income immigration, that are known to not be as safe. There's also, when it comes to transportation, some of them are not as good when it comes to transport. And when it comes to Lisbon, like, there is a few neighborhoods. There's often even some that have shootings. I was shocked about that. When I did my last Lisbon video, I went around with my Lisbon agent it was actually the second one that I talk about, not the city center, but the regions immediately after the city center. And one of them is actually known for kind of drug conflicts and shootings. So it's not like Portugal. I think it's now on the 8th safest country in the world. So we do not have a lot of violent crime, but it doesn't mean we have zero.
Right. So some of the crime that we do see, is it more like petty crime in some of the lower socioeconomic areas? People are pickpocketing or breaking into cars.
Pickpocketing and breaking in, I would say, and frauds are the most common, probably.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so then moving away from the Lisbon region, well, actually, let's stick to the Lisbon region, because you mentioned about 3,000 euros for a rental, and there's bidding wars with something like that. What kind of is the range for a studio apartment, like a centrally located studio apartment, 1-bedroom apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, and so on?
That's the thing. It depends a lot on the region. Like, Cascais is more expensive. We actually have a client that is going to pay 2,400 euros for a 1-bedroom apartment in the Cascais area. We also have clients paying on the 1,400 on the Lisbon area. So once again, it depends a lot on the neighborhood. And we've seen some crazy things. Like, my agent has been to these apartments that we say it's the doorkeeper apartments, os apartamentos do porteiro, that basically were made for the person that was the doorkeeper when the building was made. And they are often very, very small. And some of them don't even have windows. And I've seen people try to rent them for like over 1,000 euros per month. And I find that crazy, an apartment without windows.
Yeah. What's causing this? Is it just like extremely low stock? People are desperate to live close to their job. Like, why the clamor for Lisbon?
I think a lack of offer. So overall, right now, I was talking about this with my lawyer a few months ago, and he was telling me, like, in the 80s, he said we have think it was like less than half of the amount of construction happening that we did in the 80s. And you can tell that immigration is drastically rising. So at the moment, we already have like 1.5 million foreigners declared in Portugal by the IMA agency. So we are not experiencing a reduced demand, but we are experiencing a reduced rate of construction, which means there are less houses available. And there is, of course, a lot of things like it is also known that in Portugal, there are also a lot of empty apartments. I do think it's very hard to put those and make those on the market because they are private property. Two, a lot of them are run down and the people don't have the capacity to restore them. Sometimes they are on like inheritance wars, and which the people are not agreeing and not putting them on the market. So although this is often comes out in politics, like we have so many empty houses, that's true. But I don't think that's a problem that we can easily tackle and solve. I think it would be a lot more productive to focus on construction.
Okay. Yeah, because I think just recently, and if you can touch on this, if I'm correct in saying this, but it sounds like the government is trying to speed up the process at which people can get construction permits. Or at least maybe that's by municipality. I'm not sure.
They have been making some measures in order to try and improve the situation. And I can tell you that the situation was very bad and very frustrating because you also work with construction. You know how horrible it is. So it takes months to get licensings, and then you get stuck with ridiculous things for sometimes requests that make no sense, or in your case, like people just decided to make you problems for no actual good reason. Like I have, as you know, I also have a big investor client that has 140 apartments to develop in Gaia. And we started this. He bought the plot in November 2022. We still haven't started construction. And it's not because he's not ready.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I remember distinctly having this conversation. You facilitated this conversation where we spoke with him, and he kind of laid out his plan. And what he was attempting to do was, one, very ambitious, but two, very benevolent.
Yes.
And that he's trying to create a social, not social housing, but a situation whereby there would be some affordable housing provided, while there would be other housing that would be kind of at market rate. And it was going to be able to provide quite a few Portuguese families a high quality house for under market value. And yet at every step, it seems like the government is slowing him down.
Yes, it's very frustrating. And right now we actually are about to get the final licensing, which is still crazy because we are in October 2025. It's been 3 years. It's crazy. But
it's amazing he stuck it out.
Yes, it is. He has been extremely patient. I am very proud of him. So because I think most people would have gone crazy by now. And the truth is, it's because he does have the capital available. But, most people are not able to have this much money stuck for this long.
You're right.
And it's not a good thing at all. And that's another irony in this, is that when they changed these regulations in order to have the simplex, which is the supposed facilitated licensing process, it was actually when we were about to submit the latest licensing, because everything was stuck with Town Hall for a while. And we actually opted to go with the old model because there were a lot of bureaucratical concerns on the new model that we were not sure would actually facilitate the process. So we actually went with the old modeling, licensing model. But overall, the positive thing about the new model is that they impose deadlines, and that if they are not met by Town Hall, supposedly the projects get automatically approved.
Yeah.
which I do think is a good thing, but it also can bring some problems, like if they become automatically approved but are not in accordance to the legal requirements, then the works, when they find that out, will be embarked, so basically stopped. So overall, it becomes also the responsibility of the person who is submitting it to actually make sure things are in order. But yes, there are good things and things are taking good steps, but what I observe as someone who works in that market is that although the measures make sense and have been implemented, I don't think the town halls are being able to keep up with what was defined, also due to lack of staff, or I'm not sure if it's lack of staff or lack of organization. It's just something is lacking.
Sure. Okay. So we've talked now about the south, which is Algarve. We went north into Lisbon. We spoke a little bit about Gaia, but I don't want to jump to the north of Portugal yet. When Kaylee and I moved here to Portugal in 2020, and we started to create content, more like deeper content about Portugal, one of the areas that so many people talked about great value for money, whether it was buying an ocean view property or getting a rental, was the Silver Coast. Mm-hmm. Is the Silver Coast still a spot where people can have like good value for money and make their Portugal dream come true?
Curiously, the Silver Coast were the place where I had the most demand when I started a business. At the time, I was in living in Caldas when I started. I've been spending more time in Porto now, but at the time, that was where we had the most demand. We currently have the most demand in the north. But I do think that the Silver Coast can have very interesting offer due to also the proximity to Lisbon, and depending on the region, like say Leiria. Leiria is almost the same distance to Porto and Lisbon, and it's like 2 hours. So it's not that far, especially from an American perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very, very affordable. Like Leiria, it's been one of the cities I've been talking about, the up and coming, because the prices are still, I don't remember exactly, but I think it's still between 1,500 and 1,700. It's still under 2,000 per square meter. The city has developed really, really nicely, because I went by Leiria relatively often, like 10, 15 years ago, because I studied in Caldas da Rainha and my university was part of the University of Leiria. And so I went to Leiria relatively often. And at the time, I actually didn't like the city that much. And when I went there again last year and see how much they improved and changed and made a lot of great green areas, and the commerce is a lot more active. That's another thing that I noticed. At the time, there was a lot of like run down, closed stores.
Yeah,
the commerce was really really active. There was a lot of esplanadas full of people. The city was really alive with a lot of green areas, a lot of activities. So I do think it's definitely one of the up and coming areas that I would recommend, especially for someone that has a more conservative budget. But it's also going to be very likely a very good investment city, because we've been talking about the price highs of Portugal. So as you can see, these cities are very, very likely to grow in price relatively fast in the last 10 years. So if you buy now, it's probably that in the last 5 to 10 years, you will have a very good return on investment.
How do you feel about working with investors? Like, do you like working with investors, or do you prefer to service people that are going to be kind of the end users for the homes that they purchase?
I do like working with investors like the one I'm working with now. So people that are looking to create something that's positive for the community. I personally don't particularly like to work with investors that aren't just in it for the profit.
Okay.
So that's
almost
one of
like speculators, maybe?
Yes. And unfortunately, most of the Portuguese companies are very much like that. And like I said, my family has a lot of real estate, and we have this big plot in Porto too. And I had some conversation with Portuguese construction companies that tried to buy it, and I didn't like those conversations, to be honest. because it's very much about basically them saying how they can make the most profit, and they are really not at all thinking of anything other than that.
I see. Are there any companies like I guess like a BlackRock that exist in Portugal?
I don't even know what BlackRock is.
Like a big a big investment group that goes around and they like purchase up properties kind of at just a mega level.
I actually don't know the names of the companies, but I do know that exists. It's actually been on the news a lot, and a lot of people complaining, especially on like the Airbnb market. Like in the center of Porto and Lisbon especially, there's a huge number of Airbnbs that are owned by these big real estate fund companies.
Yeah, it would be like a real estate fund. Okay. Yeah, something like that. Are there several of those that exist? And do they dominate the market? Do they have like a majority share of the market combined?
I don't think, like individually, I don't think they have a majority share of the market. But I do think that if we look at downtown Porto and downtown Lisbon, they will collectively have a very high share of the market.
Okay. Because I mean, obviously that can influence prices, right? Yes. When these groups have so much of the market.
And I think that's also one of the reasons they started restricting Airbnbs.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So Leiria, great place. Silver Coast, still a solid place in general, in terms of like actually on the coast. Because Leiria doesn't
Leiria is not. It's like it's interior. It's interior, but not that interior. It's like 20 minutes to the coast. So
yeah. Okay. Okay. So then moving further north, what are you seeing in kind of the north, Porto, Braga, Guimarães, Viana, Castelo, this area in terms of the real estate market?
Well, I am still a sucker for the north, so that may be my fault that we are getting more people in the north, because I do love the north, and because I'm more of a actually mountain person than a coast person, and we have Gerês here, which is gorgeous, and a lot of beautiful green areas. And overall, even Porto as a city, although it definitely has been rising in prices, I don't think it's as unsustainable as Lisbon. It's also very significantly lower. Like not too long ago, the Lisbon center was at 5,500, while Porto was at 3,500. So it's a very, very significant difference. And I do think that Porto is a bit more sustainable in that way. And I also personally like the culture in the north a bit better because it's more familiar, while Lisbon is more international and more like people minding their own businesses and doing their own things. And I do think often there is more community around the expats, and while the locals have this like very closed tight knits and don't really let people in, like in the north area where you kind of, I often joke that you stumble on the rock and someone invites you to dinner.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like when I look at kind of the cultures of the different regions, the north very much feels like a collectivist culture. And then the south, Lisbon and the south, feels more individualistic.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting hearing from your perspective. You feel the same way, but you're Portuguese. So you should have a better end than I do for sure. Okay. So in terms of like rental rates and stock, are there any places that have good housing stock that maybe if you can't find a rental in Porto, you should look at this city?
I think that, for example, Gaia is one of the places that has been having a lot of construction and has good housing stock. It probably has a lot more apartments, especially new builds on the market. Also because it started developing a lot more recently, so there was more places to develop in the first place. Yeah. While in the center, especially the problems with the city centers tend to be that, so there's a lot less places that you can just develop and are empty to develop. And in order to get new property, you often have to renew old property, and that's often a lot of barriers to that, whether if it's still some people living there, if there's like if the whole building belongs to the same person or not. Like, it's a lot harder to, unless the whole building is put up for sale free of tenants, it's a lot harder to, get a whole building to renovate.
Yeah. And for those that are listening that don't know Gaia, it's right across the river from Porto. It's Vila Nova de Gaia if you're trying to search it. And we'll put these names in the description for you to check out and for your references as you want to Google where we're talking about. What about a place like Viana do Castelo? Because we actually just did an interview with someone. Yeah,
I wanted to go and film Viana do Castelo and do a video about Viana do Castelo, but it started to rain, and I knew that. I was like, I need to do that before it started to rain, but it started to rain. So anyway.
When we were up there a couple years ago and wanted to film, it was like every time I got the camera out, the rain started. It was crazy.
Yes, it tends to be like
that. But we also did go during rainy season, so it was a bit our fault. Like, we could have gone in the spring or in the summer to get a little better filming done. But what's the housing stock there like? Because we've heard from a family that we knew that wanted to move there. They really struggled to find a rental that not only worked for them, but just like options. They had one option and it didn't quite work because of the terms the landlord wanted.
That's often the problem in this kind of smaller locations tend to be there is not a lot of housing on the market, especially on the rental market. It's often even easier to buy something than it is to rent something. And the other thing is kind of expectations. Because, for example, Portuguese people, most of them, they won't have air conditioning in their houses. They often have like less good windows. So if you want something nice with good isolation, good appliances, and so on, in this kind of smaller regions, it will make the task of actually finding it a lot harder. And then it also becomes the problem of then these apartments end up being tailored to expats and the prices a bit inflated.
Okay. Do you think that new build or new construction is like this? Because I hear a lot of people complaining online, at least, and I think that most of them are Portuguese, about how what's being constructed now is like luxury market, upper market construction, and therefore it's being built for foreigners, specifically like wealthier foreigners.
I know that people are complaining about that, but that is actually not true at all. I mean, there are instances where that is true. And I actually encountered that in Porto. And the last video I made about Porto was actually also the second circle of Porto. And there are some regions that I was absolutely shocked with the market prices that people were trying to sell new construction for, like 6,000 euros a square meter. I mean, that's absurd. Don't buy that. But there are definitely much higher construction costs than there used to be 10 years ago. Not only are the plot costs higher, the work, the handiwork is more expensive, the materials are more expensive, and overall I do think that it also comes down, of course, to what you spend, but it will be very, very hard to find new construction under 3,000 euros per square meter because of all these factors. And as someone that is also kind of developing and managing construction projects, I can tell you there are a lot of costs. There's also a lot of not the regulations on construction and demands on the quality of construction are a lot higher now than they used to be 10 years ago. So that's also a factor. I do think that's a positive factor, though, because it makes, theoretically at least, makes the construction better quality and better isolated and so on and so forth, better energy rates, which I do think it's a good thing. But I do think that when it comes to new construction, if you find something like under 3,000, it's going to be an amazing deal anywhere. And then it will depend, of course, on location. Like in a location when the plots are very expensive to begin with, they will be more expensive. Like if you look at Avenidas Novas in Lisboa is very much about these highly well renovated buildings with a lot of architectural details that are very appreciated often by foreigners, but are also very expensive works to do. So I do think that charging 5,000, 6,000 per square meter in this kind of builds, it is somewhat justified because of the cost of location and the cost of works, as long as the actual construction is good quality. The same thing cannot be said for something that is completely built from scratch in an area like Bessa, Porto, where I've seen 6,000 per square meter prices. So overall, it comes down to know the market. There are definitely things that are inflated, but I do think that the majority of construction, the prices is justified.
Okay. So as a whole, looking at kind of being a buyer coming into the market, and then we'll talk about a renter coming into the market, what are some do's and don'ts that a foreigner should look out for and be aware of?
I think first of all is kind of know your budget and what the locations are that are aligned with your budget. And I do think that it is highly beneficial to work with the buyer agent because of the lack of transparency on the market. And you can overall, like Idealista has this tool where you can search the prices per square meter in the areas, which is extremely useful and the only like open tool that you have for that, because then we have like the private software that I have, Casafari, but you have to have a license in order to use it. So it does give a lot more details on the state of the market, but you cannot access it as a general public. So that is definitely a start. So I do think that one of the most important things to try and figure out is if the property is well priced, and you do have to have a lot of inside information to do that. And in order to figure that information on your own, it's going probably to take you a lot longer than to just hire someone who knows it.
Right. What are some things that people should watch out for? Like never offer asking price, always negotiate, that type of thing?
That's actually another thing. Lots of people are like, "Oh, all prices are negotiable." They really aren't, and especially in new construction, it's generally prices are final. You generally never get negotiation margin in new construction. You will get like 5 to 15% negotiation margin on private resales of existing property. It will depend a lot on how it's priced and how in a hurry the sellers are. Of course, the more they need the money, the more they will probably be willing to negotiate, but there's a lot of people that are just willing to sit on it. So
what would be considered like a completely lowball offer? Like how much percentage off would be?
We actually have that. Like we've had sometimes it's actually not very common, but we occasionally have these clients, the clients that like to try and lowball, and we actually this puts it in a really bad position because this can be offensive.
Right.
And we generally, when our client wants to make a very low ball offer, so like, okay, this comes from our client, please don't be mad at us.
Right. Please don't hang up when I say this.
But it really depends also if because sometimes there is the scalpers, the people that we often say are tirar o barro à parede, so they're just trying to see if things stick. And when we see this kind of clearly inflated prices, it can be acceptable to make an offer up to 20% lower. I would say that anything more than 20%, it's probably going to be a bit offensive.
Okay. All right,
and I would say in most cases, it's like 5 to 10% is the expected negotiation range.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate that you made a distinction between like secondhand housing versus new construction. Do you recommend people do pre-construction, like purchase pre-construction? Is that for the people that are patient and know that
that is for the people that are patient, for sure?
Yeah, because obviously, like when we sold our units for our real estate development, you know, we had 6 total, and we've sold them all that we wanted to sell, and the buyers kind of knew going in, okay, we have this target date of 2025, but we also know that the likelihood of missing it is high because of different things that happen in Portugal. But also I was able to give, or I wanted to give, kind of a discount on what we knew new construction price was going to be, because there's risk that's carried. So, I mean, is that what would you recommend people that have a bit more patience and have a little more tolerance for risk to do pre-construction?
If you have a long timeline, like if you want to buy something but you are only coming to Portugal in like 2-3 years, buying something in an early construction stage can be a great option. You generally get like 20 to 30% discount, sometimes a bit more depending on how much the market inflates in the meantime. So it can definitely be a good purchase, and this is actually an investment strategy to a lot of people. And it's we often come around the resellers. I was going to say scalpers, but that's not called them that. Like the resellers that kind of buy the apartments on early construction and they sell them at market rate when the construction is finished. And it's a funny thing because especially when they are Portuguese, they always try. We see this so often, especially in the north, like people who do this, but then want to get paid the same thing they get paid, so they don't pay profit tax. So they to receive the rest kind of under the table, and we're all like, please don't do this with foreigners. I mean, how is a foreigner going to do this? I mean, this is not even recommendable for Portuguese people.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so what do we see when it comes to rentals? What are some things that people need to watch out for, kind of the do's and don'ts then of approaching the rental market?
The thing about the rental market is that it's completely different from the buying market from the start. It's a lot faster. It's a lot hotter. So there is like, it can be crazy, especially in like Lisbon and Porto. And as a landlord, the last time I put an apartment on the market myself, I had 30 contacts in a day. And that in Lisbon, it's even worse. Like people will have like 100 people applying for the same apartment, and things go like this. And that's why there's bidding wars and so on. So unless it is like a very inflated price and so on, you probably won't have negotiation margin, and you will probably have to make a decision fast. I would definitely say to be particularly careful on the rental market because of the scams. Just not too long ago, I was looking into this, and there's 150,000 reported rental scams in the last year that go up to millions, and they're getting quite creative, and especially with this whole thing of renting the apartments online. There is a number of things people have been doing, like they have been renting Airbnbs and then showing them, saying that it's theirs, and then renting that out. They have been making fake contracts. They have been there's all these scammers. There's the more obvious ones that just go like, oh, I'm renting this below the market because I'm outside of the country, but I cannot show it to you, and you just have to give me the deposit, kind of thing. So one of the first thing is never give money without having a signed contract. And even the signed contracts can be forged, and the only thing you can actually check on the signed contracts is whether if they always have like the registro perdial and matriz, and see if the name matches, if the owner matches. And if not, you have to check whether or not that person has the power to represent the owner. So I think there's very few people that work as rental support agents. So we do both rentals and purchases, and but I think we are one of the very few ones, because it's not as much work as getting a buyer, but it can be like a lot of work, and we charge a fixed rate. So it's obviously a lot less profitable than dealing with sellers. And there's very few people. I think I know of one other company that does it on the market, and they do it on a commission base. We don't do it on a commission base. We do it on a fixed rate of service, because I do think that the commission base kind of incentivizes the higher rentals and higher prices, and that's not something I want. But yes, be very careful on the rental market because there is a lot of dishonesty and there is a lot of demand. So things get crazy.
Okay, because I think people might get, they might feel like they're in a situation, especially if they need a rental for their visa appointment. They feel like in a rush to just get a signed contract and a lease to show VFS or whoever they have to apply through, and they make bad decisions. Like they don't do their due diligence. They don't reach out to companies like Savvy Cat to know. Okay,
and I've been seeing that a lot more because especially with the situation of the US, one of the things we've been noticing is the company is that the clients are less prepared. There's a lot of people kind of on panic mode that just want to get out, but don't really are kind of lost on how to do it or are kind of in a hurry. And we really kind of need to be a bit of therapists here and just try and smooth the process out so that to try and avoid bad decisions. But in the end, like we always warn people and are extremely honest, like there's been cases where we actually didn't recommend to the client to sign the contract and the client opted to sign the contract. Like our job is to tell you there are risks and what the risks are, but we cannot stop you for doing things.
Sure. Wow. Yes. Okay. So we've got your links in the description section, and actually you're one of the podcast sponsors, and we've put your links in all of the description sections, and we appreciate how you've supported us in our content journey. And as we've continued to work together, because Kaylee and I are clients of Savvy Cat Realty, we've worked with Marco in the North. He's been awesome, such a great support for us. If we have any problems, we just send him a WhatsApp message or call him. And unless he's with another client, he picks up and eases our mind about some shenanigans that's occurred. But no, Anna, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's been a lot of really, really good insight into what's happening in Portugal as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm glad to be here. And I hope to keep collaborating in the future.
Let's do it.